So today we're going to learn about rational equations, and this is under college algebra review. So our first rational equation is 1 divided by y minus 1 plus 2 over y plus 1 equals 0. So the first step of finding. Okay, so remember rational equation, it's always p over q. So it should always have a fraction. So that's how you know it's rational. So the first step of finding a rational equation is you must find the common denominator. So in our case, our common denominator is y plus 1 and then y minus 1. So let's look here. So what are we missing here? We're missing a y minus 1. So we have to multiply top and bottom by y minus 1. And then over here, we're missing a y plus 1. And then you have to always do on the right side, but since this is a 0, it's just going to stay 0, right? So let's simplify the numerator. So 1 times y plus 1 is y plus 1. And then times this, right? 2 times y minus 1 is 2y minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so okay. And divided by the common denominator, y plus 1, y minus 1. You'll see that the common denominator will cancel, because if you multiply right and bottom by the common denominator, y plus 1, y minus 1, you will see that the right side is 0, and then this just cancels. So you're just left with y plus 1 plus 2y minus 2 equals 0, because 0 times anything is 0. And then, so we got to simplify. 2y plus y is 3y. 1 plus negative 2 is negative 1. Add 1 both sides. 3y equals 1 divided by 3. So we get y equals 1/3. If you were to, then you always have to check it. So if I already checked it, and if you have to put in the original equation, not the manipulated ones. Don't put see how I manipulated this part? Don't put a 1/3 in the y. So it's still true, because I briefly did it in my head. So y equals 1/3. That's true, but you always have to make sure you have to check it. Let's do another one. We have 2 divided by x minus 3 minus 3 over x plus 3 equals 12. So we need to find, the first step is find the common denominator. So our common denominator is x plus 3 and then x minus 3. Right? So let's look over here. What are we missing in x minus 3? So we gotta multiply that by top and bottom. And over here we're missing an x plus 3. And over here, whoops, I didn't finish the problem. This is 12 over x squared minus 9. So that was part of the problem, but luckily this factors perfectly into x plus 3 and x minus 3. So we don't need to multiply the right side anything, right? And then you know that the denominator will cancel, because if you multiply right and left by x plus 3 and x minus 3, they cancel, right? So you just have to, let's focus on the denominator just cancels automatically. So pretend the denominator is not there. So let's stick with the numerator. 2 times x plus 3 is 2x plus 3 minus, I'm going to put parentheses, 3x minus 9 equals 12. So let's simplify. So this distribute this negative, so that's negative 3x plus 9. So 2x plus negative 3x is negative x, and then 9 plus 3 is 10, 11, 12 equals 12. I made a mistake, so it should be 2x plus 6, not. So that's 3x minus 9, good. So it should be, hold on, negative x, and then 6 plus 9 is positive 15 equals 12, and then let's solve for x. So subtract 15, negative x equals negative 3. Let's divide everything by negative 1. So x equals 3. Let's see, we gotta check it to make sure it's true, because sometimes it might not work. So 2 divided by, okay, so 3 minus 3 is 0, minus 3 divided by 3 plus 3 is 6 equals 12, and then 3 squared minus 9 is 0. This part is 0, so that's 0. Minus 3 over 6 is reduced by 3, so it's 1 over 6 over 3 is 2. Is this true? No. Not true. So x does not equal 3. So we have no solution for this problem. Let's do number 3. We have negative 1 So first step for this problem is find the common denominator. So first step, I'm going to factor this part because it might be our common denominator. 2 numbers multiplied by negative 18 and added negative 3 is negative 6 and positive 3. Okay, so I think our common denominator is this. First, wait, this one 6 minus 6 looks really weird. Let's try to manipulate it to make it look like x minus 6. So we can factor out a negative, and then that should be x minus 6. So voila, it looks something like this. We just manipulate it. And this should not be a negative, this should have been positive. Okay, so we found our common denominator, so we don't need to touch the right side. But let's move, we need, and we're missing an x minus 6, so let's multiply x minus 6, both sides. We're missing, but don't forget this negative, right? So we have an x minus 6, and then, so we're missing an x plus 3. But so we have to remember this negative we can move that negative on top, so it should be negative x plus 3. Negative 1 times x plus 3. Now remember the common denominator cancels, so just ignore that for right now. So let's start with the numerator. So that would be negative 1 times x plus 3 is negative x minus 3 plus 2 times x minus 6 is 2x minus 12 equals 5x. And the denominator cancels because if you were to multiply that by the x minus 6, x plus 3, it just cancels. So let's simplify the left. We have a 2x and a negative x, so that is an x. We have a negative 12 and a negative 3, so that's negative 15 equals 5x. We want to solve for x, so I will subtract 5x. So negative 5x plus x is negative 4x minus 15 equals 0. Add 15 both sides. Negative 4x equals 15. Divided by negative 4. So x equals negative 15 fourths. Good. Now we gotta check it, so I already checked it manually, but if you didn't, go ahead and put it back into the original equation, and then you should get negative 15 fourths equals negative 15 fourths. So that's true. So we conclude that x equals negative 15 fourths. We have 11 x squared minus 25 minus 2 over x minus 5 equals 1 over x plus 5. So for our first step is find the common denominator. So first step, I'm going to factor this, and I know this is a perfect square. So this is x plus 5 and x minus 5. And I think that's our common denominator. So if that's our common denominator, let's go on the right. What are we missing? We're missing an x minus 5. And over here, we're missing an x plus 5. And over here, we don't need to touch it. And then we agree that the denominator cancels. So you're just left with the numerator. So it would be 11 minus, and I'm going to put parentheses, 2 times x plus 5 is 2x plus 10. And then you have to distribute that negative, so that's why I'm putting in parentheses. And then 1 times x minus 5 is x minus 5. So let's distribute this negative, so this is a negative 2x minus 10. Bring down the 11, so 11 minus 10 is 1. And then bring down that negative 2x equals x minus 5. Let's solve for x, so I will get the right side 0, so I gotta subtract negative x and then add 5 because I wanted the right side 0, so negative x and then add 5. So 1 plus 5 is 6, and then negative 2x minus x is negative 3x equals 0. I'll subtract that negative 6. So you're left with negative 3x equals negative 6, and then divided by negative 3, both sides. x should equal 2. Let's check it. So it would be 11, putting it in the original equation, so 2. So 2 squared is 4 minus 25 minus 2 over, remember I'm putting it in the original one, not the manipulated, so 2 minus 5 is negative 3 equals 1 over 2 plus 5 is 7. So 4 minus 25 is negative 21, and then we have two negatives, right? Two negatives is a positive, so that's 2/3. Positive 2/3. And then we need to get a common. We need a common denominator. We have a negative 21, so that our common denominator is negative 21, so we multiply this by negative 7. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. Negative 14 plus 11 is negative 3 over negative 21 equals 1/7. This reduces, two negatives becomes positive, so, and then this reduces by 3, so that would be 1 over 21 divided by 3 is 7. 1/7. So that's just true. So x must be true. X equals 2. Okay, 2 more. So we have 1 over a equals negative 6 over a squared plus 5. I am looking at this and I can't even factor this, right? I don't have a common denominator, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply. So if you're ever in a situation where you can't factor it, try cross multiplying because it could work. So it's 1 times a squared plus 5 is a squared plus 5, right? 1 times that, and then equals negative 6 times a, which is negative 6a. We have to solve for a, so I'm going to get this side 0, so I'm going to add 6a. So a squared plus 6a plus 5 equals 0, and then let's factor this out. So that's a, and then what two numbers multiplied 5 gives you, when added, gives you 6. So I will use positive 5 and positive 1. So we get a equals negative 5 and a equals negative 1. Okay, so you got to check. Lucky for you, I already done it. So if you put these into the original equation, they should equal true. And I've already done it, and they both work. So I will just save some algebra. But if you don't believe me, just go ahead and put it back in the equation. Last one. We're given negative 1 over x squared minus 3x equals 1 over x plus x over x minus 3. First, we got to find common GCF. So our common GCF. Let's factor this part because this looks very factorable. Okay, so this is our GCF, or common denominator. So what are we missing here? We are missing an x. So let's multiply top and bottom by x. And what are we missing here? X minus 3. Okay, and then you know that the denominator cancels. So you're just left with the numerator. So on the left, you get -1, because we didn't touch this part. So 1 times x minus 3 is x minus 3, plus x times x is x squared. So let's simplify x squared plus x minus 3 minus 1. Okay, so let's get this part 0. So let's get the left 0. So I'm going to get rid of this -1 by adding 1. So we get x squared plus x. -3 plus 1 is -2 equals 0. So this is x, x, and then what two numbers multiply gives you -2, and when added, +1, plus 2, and then -1. So x equals -2, and then x equals 1. Okay, so you're going to put it back in the original equation, and I already did, and they both work. But if you don't believe me, go ahead and put it back. But you always have to check, because sometimes none of them works. But they work in this case, so yes. And yeah, that's it for this section.